Because when we experience this freedom in Christ, it doesn't leave us as we are. It brings a transformation in our lives. And here's how we're transformed. It's the second reality. It's that freedom in Christ changes our priorities. That when we experience that gift of Jesus through God's grace in our life, then our priorities can't help but being changed and transformed. And when we experience it, it sets up that domino effect that leads to transformation of our priorities. Paul continues on and he explains it this way. He says, "For through the Spirit we eagerly await by faith the righteousness for which we hope. For in Christ Jesus, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision has any value. The only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love." The only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love. Now, because of this faith that we have in Jesus, we're transformed to look at the world different, to value things different, to have different priorities. And we experience righteousness because of it. We experience that being right before God because of it. That we become more like God when we allow God into our lives. We could say it this way, that when we allow God into our lives, what comes out of us and how we live is love and His grace. Have you ever experienced a gift that really just changed your priorities? Chelsea and I have one of those gifts on the way. Her name's Olivia Grace Robbins, and she is due to come November 7th. And yeah, we are so excited. Here is a picture, actually. Oh, aww. Here's our picture of our Facebook announcement of the gender reveal. And Chelsea and I are just so excited for our gift of Olivia to come in November. And truthfully, it's super surreal to kind of, see those ultrasound pictures and her starting to take shape and form. And truthfully, Olivia's already changed our priorities. We've already spent time starting to get the house ready and prepare the nursery. And we've already spent the first of what I believe is going to be a lot of money on little Olivia. She's not going to be spoiled at all. I can tell you that. But you know what? It's all going to be worth it. And when she comes in November, I know our world is going to completely change. And we're so excited for it. Olivia is the gift that's going to change our priorities, and it's the same thing when we experience the gift of Jesus in our lives and the freedom that He gives us, that our priorities can't help but change. One of my favorite stories of how these priorities have been changed for somebody because of their freedom in Christ is the gentleman of Henry Nouwen. He was a Catholic priest, and Henry Nouwen from a very young age excelled in school. And he would go on to an Ivy League college and later amassed multiple graduate and doctorate and PhD degrees. And he would then go on to teach at prestigious institutions like Harvard, Yale, and Notre Dame. And Henry Nouwen was literally on the top rung of the educational ladder. Yet when he was in his mid-50s, he decided to give up all of it because he felt that he wasn't using the freedom in Christ to its fullest potential that God's equipped and called him to live out. And so he left the packed lecture halls that he was used to teaching in to go and become an orderly at a special needs community in Canada. He gave up his famed position to change diapers and give people baths who weren't able to take care of themselves. And while he was there living in this community, he befriended a guy named Trevor. And one day, Trevor needed to go to the hospital for an extended period of evaluation and care at a psychiatric hospital. And so Henry knew of Trevor's travel that he had to do, and he wanted to visit his friend Trevor while he was at the hospital for his evaluation and care. And so he contacted the hospital, and he began to arrange a visit. And when the hospital got wind that the famous Henry Nouwen, the great philosopher and psychologist, was going to be there among their midst, they decided they wanted to throw a special lunch and have Henry be the special guest and say a few words and invite the the just different distinguished guests, different PhDs, different clergymen and dignified leaders. And so they set up this entire lunch for Henry in the Golden Room. It was the nicest room in the whole hospital, reserved for only the best of occasions. They had the finest china and the best silverware all laid out in the Golden Room. And so the time came for Henry's visit for his friend Trevor. And he arrived at the hospital, and the people in control organizing the day brought Henry into the room, and the day kind of began and their festivities ensued. And Henry quickly noticed that Trevor wasn't there. And so he went to the one in charge and he said, "Well, where's Trevor? Oh, why isn't he here?" And the person responded, "Oh, well, we have a strict policy here at the hospital that patients aren't allowed to eat with doctors. And really, truthfully, there's never been anybody, a patient that's ever entered in the Golden Room, because that's just our policy and it doesn't work." And Henry, really disappointed actually, said, "Well, my whole point of my visit was to come and see Trevor and to have lunch with him. If Trevor's not allowed in this lunch to be with us, well, then I'm not going to be able to attend either." And this upset a couple people who thought that, well, patients and doctors should never eat together. This should be a bond that was never to be broken. But Henry persisted, and he said, "No, I'm not going to come if you're not going to let Trevor be here at lunch." So the thought of not having their esteemed guest at their lunch was worse than allowing Trevor to eat in the Golden Room with Henry. So they went off and they found Trevor, and they brought him there, and he sat next to Henry in their lunch. And in the course of their meal, Henry started talking to somebody to the right of him, getting consumed in this conversation. Trevor slowly snuck out of his seat, and without anybody noticing, he snuck up to the stage and to the podium. And at the mic, he makes an announcement. He says, "A toast! I would like to make a toast." And the room full of PhDs and dignified leaders and clergymen quickly grew silent. Everybody was wondering, what is this Trevor going to do? And Trevor takes his glass and he raises it and he starts singing, "If you're happy and you know it, raise your glass. If you're happy and you know it, raise your glass." And nobody was singing at first, but Trevor just persisted, and he was beaming as he just continued to belt it out. "If you're happy and you know it, then your face will surely show it. If you're happy and you know it, raise your glass." And slowly, one by one, people started singing at first. "If you're happy and you know it, raise your glass." And eventually, the whole room was just busting with everybody singing at the top of their lungs, "If you're happy and you know it, raise your glass." And in that room, in that moment, everyone was blessed by somebody willing to use their freedom in Christ to change their priorities. There was no longer haves and have-nots. There was no longer doctors and patients. But everybody was blessed because of how somebody was willing to love.